Hey guys, thanks for coming along. This is episode 25 in my series 100 Casts, in which I will be shoutcasting over 100 games of League of Legends sent in to me by fans and friends. If you'd like your replay to be featured in the channel, check the description. You can figure out how to do that down there. 25, damn. That's a quarter of the way through. Well, I'll see you at the end of the video. Alright, well, let's get started with this one then. This one was sent in to me by the Skarner on Purple Team, and I believe it's a fairly lower level match, but still be fun to watch. We might get to see some interesting builds and matchups actually, since that's usually a hallmark of a lower level game. Anyways, let's get into the matchups as I just said. Down in bottom lane, on Purple Team, we have a Morgana and a Kog'Maw, and that's going to be up against a Varus and Sona. The first thing that I notice about those two lanes is that neither one of them has any mobility. Sona does have a speed buff, I suppose, but no instant mobility. No leaps, no jumps, no hops, no dashes, no blinks, nothing like that. Just immobile champions all around, which means that it's going to be very difficult for them to dodge engages from the enemy team. So basically, whichever team can get that better engage down there in the bottom lane is going to have a better time of a fight. Moving on to some of the other matchups, in the middle lane, it's a Katarina versus a Zed. Now, Katarina's going for an old-fashioned start here, going with boots and health potions, call back all the way to Season 2, whereas Zed is choosing to go with a longsword and some health potions, which is not as common a start, but is certainly more common than boots and pots. And, you know, I don't really know who to call in that matchup, who's going to be in favor there. The Katarina actually has, oddly enough, chosen to go with Ghost, which I wouldn't have done personally, but she does have a blink in the form of Shun Po, so she doesn't really need flash as much as some other champions might, such as the ones down in bottom lane, which I mentioned earlier, who all have taken flash, thankfully for them, so they do have a blink, I suppose, but it's on quite a long cooldown, and not really a champion inherent ability, so not really something inherent to the matchup, but more just something that everybody seems to like to take, flash being the most powerful and most commonly taken summoner spell in the game. And Jax in the jungle on blue team is going to be starting off with his blue buff, probably going to be turning that machete into a feral flare, and the enemy jungler is a Skarner. He actually has a few choices there. He could go with a Elder Lizard if he gets quite ahead for the extra damage. He could go with a Ancient Golem. That's the most common pickup for Skarners, who generally like to build tanky items. Or he could go with a Feral Flare even. I don't see it too often, but it is certainly possible. Skarner is not bad with attack speed, as in the middle lane, Katarina has gotten an advantage early on. She's level 2 before the Zed is, going in with Ignite. Gets the first blood, but goes down thereafter to the passive from Zed, as she was low and thus took extra bonus damage off of his auto attack, as well as the Ignite, which he cast just before he died. So that is a kill going over to Katarina, and a kill going over to Zed, though I believe Katarina got the first blood there, so she comes out a little bit ahead in terms of gold. She does go back and pick herself up in Amplifying Tome, whereas Zed chooses to use his money to turn his longsword into a Vampiric Scepter, giving him some sustain in that lane to deal with the bouncing knives that Katarina is going to be constantly throwing out at him. While we have a moment here, I would like to talk about the top lane, actually, as it swaps up there. It is a Dr. Mundo versus an Akali, and the Akali has chosen to go with a Doran's Blade as her first item. Now, Akali generally is played AP. However, a lot of people often don't realize that she is quite good as a hybrid champion. She has her passive allows her to do quite well as hybrid, as up in the top lane, Jax is actually ganking onto the Akali. She goes into her Shroud to avoid some damage from the Jax. She does get hit by that cleaver though, forced to leave to run away from the Shroud, but she waited in there long enough for her Skarner to show up, who is now in this fight going after the enemy Jax, who is fairly low on health. Stunned up Mundo with his passive. He gets ignited though and is forced to run away. The Jax goes under tower, has Counter-Strike running, dies though as he manages to actually take out the Akali before going down himself. So that is a kill going over to blue and one going over to purple, as we're still even on kills and even on gold across the board. Though I think Akali can do a good... Actually, no, Jax scales quite well into the late game as well, so not really sure who came out ahead in that matchup up there, as Mundo's trying to get the Skarner, who's still low on health and under that turret, but Mundo himself is quite low on the old health bar, so he's gonna be basing as well as the Skarner. Anyways, as I was saying, Akali does have the ability to build hybrid. That's one of the reasons why Gunblade is such an effective item on her, because the spell vamp stacks with her natural spell vamp passive and gives her a lot of sustain, and she can use the AD quite well. A lot of her ratios scale with AD as well as AP, and her passive gives her more magic damage on her auto attacks the more AD she has. So it's certainly not a complete waste of time to build attack damage on Akali, and it looks like this Akali is going even deeper into that attack damage side of the build, and has gone for a pickaxe. As in the mid lane, we see Jax coming in to try and get a gank on Katarina. Flashes forward, actually, is under the tower with Counter-Strike running, gets the stun onto her, but he takes a few too many tower shots to continue the dive and is forced to back away, and that is Jax's flash down. And while Katarina did go quite low from that engage, she did not go down and did not have to burn any summoners either, so she's still doing perfectly fine in that lane, though looking down at the scoreboard now I can see that she's actually at fully half the CS of Zed, and so is not actually doing entirely fine in this lane, but certainly is not so far behind that she can't manage to come back here, as fully half the CS was only 9 to 18 since we're only 5 or so minutes into the game. Katarina and Zed trading once again, both falling to about the same percentage of hit points, as Mundo lands a cleaver onto Akali and just keeps running at her. However, she turns around, and those auto attacks are chunking since she's going with a more attack damage centric build and has picked up a pickaxe on top of her Doran's Blade and has quite the creep lead on this Mundo with a 26-7 advantage here. She's going to just continue farming up, continue lengthening that advantage, and we have a bit of a lull in the action again here, so while we have that, I'd just like to glance down at the builds and see that the Skarner has indeed gone for a Madred's Blood Razor, or a Madred's... what? That, the Blood Razor's the old item which got discontinued, and it is not the Madred's Razors? I'm not sure. However, the Skarner has picked up a, the item which is just before the Feral Flare. So his build path is going towards the Feral Flare, which was, I thought, the most unlikely jungle item for him to be picking up, but it seems like that's the one he's going for. So we're going to be seeing a high attack speed Skarner build, perhaps. As the Zed nearly goes down there, the Katarina jumping onto him and using Shunpo and Death Lotus to do quite a bit of damage, but he manages to escape just before he dies, as up in the top lane, the Akali's diving onto Mundo, tries to use her Shroud to escape the tower, and actually the bonus armor that Shroud gives her is enough to survive that tower hit, as now Jax and Katarina are dueling it out, but both of them are a bit too low to want to continue that duel, neither one of them being entirely sure of their victory in that duel, and so they both decide to back off. After Zed is forced to go back to base from that quite impressive burst that Katarina laid out onto him just under the edge of his tower there. Down in bottom lane, Morgana trying to land a snare into the enemy team, but she doesn't manage to, and she's basically out of mana at this point, so blue team really should be able to start pushing back into purple team here after they've been under the tower for a little while, but even being under the tower, the Varus has managed to keep a CS lead. Katarina managed to get the kill back onto Jax there. I thought for sure that she was just going to go down and not be able to get anything back, but she at least was able to activate Death Lotus in time. It just came up as Jax was returning for the return gank after Zed returned to lane. And the Jax dove under the tower, took a few too many hits, and was ignited as well as hit by a few of the knives from Death Lotus, and so went down. Snare there, landing from the Morgana down in bottom lane, and the Void Ooze slowing up the Varus, who is also out of mana. As up in top lane, Mundo's trying to duel it out with this Akali again. The Akali is level 6 though, but he is managing to land a lot of his cleavers. The Akali's down below half health, sitting in that burning agony, is taken pretty low. She jukes around in her Shroud for a bit though, and manages to dodge another cleaver and get back to the safety of her tower. Looking at Akali's items, it looks like she's going to be going for an Infinity Edge rush here. She's gotten a pickaxe and an agility cloak, a longsword on the side as well, but with the pickaxe and agility cloak, it looks like she's really trying to go for an Infinity Edge first, which is an uncommon pickup on Akali, to say the least. AD Akali is certainly not entirely impossible. She does have AD scaling. Forgive me, I don't know exactly what the scalings are since it's a fairly uncommon build, but it does exist, and so it is certainly possible, as we see Akali engaging onto the Mundo there. The Mundo managing to survive, but does get taken down very low by the Akali as she leaps in onto him and then uses Shroud to avoid any sort of counterattack. And he is still only... actually, no, he just hit level 6, so he does have his ultimate to heal back up now. And so he's going to be able to sustain in that lane and stick around. Morgana missing a snare down in bottom lane, as the Skarner has shown up to the party, looking to get a gank down in bot, but the blue team bot lane is not pushed up very far, so it would be difficult for Skarner to manage to work his way in here in such a way that a gank would be successful. Though he's going around through the tri-brush, he might be able to get something here. Nice snare from the Morgana. She drops an Ignite as well as Skarner comes rushing in from the side, using his ultimate to pull the suppressed Varus back, and that is a kill. Skarner picking up that one, and Varus going down. It is now 5 and 3 on the board for Purple Team, who have accrued for themselves about 1,000 gold lead, and we get to hear Morgana being sucked up through a vacuum cleaner going back to base. God, I hate that sound effect on that skin. As Jax has come into the top lane, stuns up the Akali, but she did manage to get into Shroud before Counter-Strike ended. Jax then flashing after her, doesn't have Leap Strike up, does actually get it up just as I say that, and is able to finalize the kill in that Tri-Brush. Had a ward to drop there so that she couldn't juke him out with Fog of War. And that is Jax getting a kill for himself, going 2 and 1. And so that is the Akali dying in top lane. Mundo maybe can take this opportunity to recoup some of his losses in terms of CS. He is still at a nearly 40 CS disadvantage against this Akali, and so is going to have to do some work to get back into that lane up there. Looks like Jax and Mundo want to go for this tower. Mundo popping his AD boost just to bring down that tower more quickly, bashing it with his briefcase, while Jax whacks away at it with that most satisfying noise in the game, hitting it over and over again. Somebody's trying to teleport in, and the Akali does manage to TP in just as the turret goes down, but she seems to have disconnected. That is unfortunate. She's going to go down to the Jax. That is another kill given over to Jax, teleporting in and then disconnecting right as she arrives. That's... talk about bad timing, but sometimes it happens. Sometimes you get DCs on your team. We can only hope that she comes back quickly and that we aren't left in a 4v5, because a 4v5 is no fun to commentate, even less fun to play. And I feel very sorry for the players, and a little bit sorry for myself, because I will have put in all this effort to commentate, and then I'd have to just scrap the video, because there's no real point in watching a 4v5, as the Zed now is being ulted by the Skarner, who has shown up in the lane. He's going to be taken down quite low. He used Deathmark to try and avoid some of the damage from Katarina, but it was not enough mitigation, as the Katarina manages to get a kill back for herself in the mid lane, putting her at 3 and 2. She has turned that Amplifying Tome into a Haunting, guys, but I'll get back to that in just a second. Is down in bottom lane. Varus is ulting onto the Kog'Maw, who goes down very quickly afterwards to the percentage chunk. Kog'Maw in his post-death form is going to run back and do some true damage to both members of the enemy bot team, but Morgana does not have enough to follow up on that. And that is a kill going over to blue team, and it's evened out the kill score at 6 and 6. Blue team does hold a slight gold lead because they have a turret to purple team's nil, to having taken that turret up in the top lane. As Katarina now is being engaged onto by the Jax, she pops Ghost. Can she escape with that speed boof? What's a boof? As up in top lane, Skarner is dueling it out with Mundo. Mundo, though, has too much health for Skarner to deal with. Nice binding from Morgana under the tower there. She's forced to flash away, though, as Varus is there to help out his friendly support and would have dealt a lot of damage to him. The Katarina, feeling a little bit cocky perhaps, tries to go in on the two members in the enemy team at quite low health, thinking the tower would protect her a bit more than perhaps it did. She does go down after doing a good amount of damage at least, but she does go down, and now her turret's going to go down as well, and that is a 2-0 turret lead for blue team, and a nearly 3,000 gold lead as well up on the board. And Akali still has yet to reconnect. Hopefully she comes back soon, or else I'm going to have to simply scrap this footage and move on to a different replay. It would really suck if that were the case, but I don't really want to put up a video which is a 4v5 because it really subtracts from the legitimacy of the video if a lot of the advantage that one team gains is simply because the enemy team had an objective disadvantage for a time and simply couldn't do anything about it, as Zed here getting ulted by the Skarner, forced to flash away after the ult ends, and then uses Shadow Swap to get out of there, but that was a summoner burned for Skarner's ulti. I'm not sure how happy he'll be with that, but it is technically a longer cooldown than the ult would be, so he's traded up in terms of that, as Katarina's here, gonna finish off that kill onto the Zed. He tried to stick around for some farm, maybe didn't realize that Katarina was around, and he went down to the instantaneous burst from that assassin in the mid lane. Well, I guess Skarner's ult was useful for something. It burned that flash. He might have been able to flash out of the Katarina's burst if he had had it up, and thankfully, Akali's back, reconnected just as the Zed went down. And Katarina's going to be taking advantage of the fact that Zed is currently dead, and is pushing up the mid lane, using those knives of hers to bring it down to at least half health here, probably even further, might even get it if Jax doesn't show up in time, as Kog'Maw is dissuading this Mundo from pushing any further up in the top lane. Kog'Maw being very, very good for dealing with a tanky Mundo, has the percentage health damage on his W, so he's able to chunk out the Mundo regardless of the fact that Mundo has quite a lot of health. Jax gets the stun from Counter-Strike onto Katarina, and I think that's going to be her death there, as Zed comes in with the death mark as well, doing a bunch of burst damage to her. And she isn't able to get the tower, and she isn't even able to get out alive, as Zed picks up that kill, giving himself another one, and both he and Katarina are coming out of this lane even on kills at 4 each. Zed having picked up a Blade of the Ruined King here, and it looks like Katarina is going for some early magic pen with the Sorcerer Shoes and a Haunting Guise, and then building into Spell Vamp with a Hextech Revolver, possibly going to be building a Hextech Gunblade. It's a fairly popular item on some lower-level Katarina players. It's a bit of a noob trap item, in all honesty, because Katarina usually, in my opinion at least, does better with larger amounts of AP rather than trying to go hybrid on her, but she does certainly have AD scaling on some of her abilities. So much like Akali, who has built a Phage at this point, looking to go for a Trinity Force perhaps, she can proc that Sheen effect quite often. Akali's often will build a Lich Bane for that reason, but since this Akali's going for AD, it seems, a Trinity Force is the best option for that build, as Katarina manages to shun Poe out of the way of 2 flashing enemies, as well as a Varus ult. Then pops Ghost to avoid the Mundo and Zed coming around the corner, and avoids death multiple times over there, as Kali manages to get a turret onto the board for Purple Team, the first one of their game, up in top lane. So that is 4-1 in terms of turrets now. The Blue Team having the 4, and Purple Team having the 1. Blue Team has a 4,000 gold advantage at this point as well, probably a result of the fact that they recently took Dragon, and they have a 3-turret lead on the map. That's a lot of global gold piling up to give them that gold advantage as they push down the middle lane, using Mundo to throw out those cleavers and get as much poke as he can onto the enemy team while they push in onto this tower. Some pings coming out onto the Akali to careful and ease up on her split pushing, since the enemy team has backed off for the most part, except for Mundo, who gets caught by the Skarner and suppressed, pulled back into a well-timed Morgana snare to keep him in place long enough that the Kog'Maw's Shred can take him out. Whereas in top lane, Akali did not heed the warnings of her teammates and is being assaulted now by Jax. She manages to flash away for a little bit, delaying the inevitable, but I think Jax is going to catch up to her. Leaf Strike comes out, another empowered auto attack, and then his ulti third proc gives Jax a killing spree, putting him at 4-2. Speaking of kill scores and build in the scoreboard, Skarner, looking at his build, he's gone for Boots of Swiftness. Yeah, Boots 3 are now called Boots of Swiftness. With Home Guard already, he's looking to go quite fast, as Zed has found a Katarina out of place, and she is stands no chance against that ninja. Goes down very quickly, and that is another kill going over to Zed there, who also wants to go quite fast. He's gone with Boots of Mobility on top of that Blade of the Ruined King, going to be slowing down enemies as well as going quite quickly himself, with those boots speeding him up whenever he's outside of combat, allowing him to roam all across the map and pick up kills here and there. Nice cleaver coming out from Mundo, landing onto Morgana. She's down at half health, but she does have more teammates than the enemy team does here. Zed, having recently gone back to base to pick up a Brutalizer and a Health Crystal, is not yet regrouped with his team, and Jax had just split pushed out of top lane, and so is not with his team either. Purple team could possibly have engaged here, but luckily the Mundo cleavers kept them enough at bay with the spammable slows that they were not able to engage when they had a numbers advantage. Though they still do, since Jax seems to want to be going towards bottom lane to push that up. He's pinged onto the turret there, that inner bottom lane turret, and he wants to split push and take that. Mundo now split off from the rest of his team, still throwing cleavers out whenever he feels like he can manage to hit one, looking to try and connect with the enemy team and do as much poke as he can before this inevitable team fight breaks out here. Going to be counter-jungling a little bit, gets bound by the Morgana, but doesn't really care that much. Mundo is tanky, Mundo has a lot of health. Mundo goes where Mundo pleases, and he's going to finish off that white camp as 3 members of Blue Team push up the mid lane. Nice ult from Varus onto the Akali. The Akali thankfully got into Shroud, though, just as it hit, and the enemy team did not guess that she would run down, and so they all were up towards the top side of the Shroud. The Zed, though, does have Flash as well as Deathmark to catch up to the Akali. However, that's not quite enough damage, the Deathmark and Ignite combined, and so she manages to survive as a nice binding lands onto the Mundo here. The Kog'Maw going to be shredding away a lot of his health, but thankfully he is Mundo and is tanky. Now Zed is the one being chased. His Boots of Mobility are keeping him fairly far ahead from the enemies, but Blade of the Ruined King is used onto Skarner, and that's going to save his life. The Skarner did have Ghost running as well as his speed buff, and the fact that he has Boots of Mobility, no, not Mobility, Boots of Swiftness already, so he was quite quick as well. But thankfully Zed had that Blade of the Ruined King, was able to use its active to keep himself out of harm's way, as blue team's going to be counter-jungling the purple team's blue buff, leaving behind those little minions to delay the respawn of that buff from the enemy team, as Skarner does his own red buff there, up towards the top side of the map. Thankfully, we have a bit of a moment of peace and quiet here while some buffs are cleared and some of the jungle camps are taken out, that white camp being Wraith camp, rather, being taken by Katarina there. So we can take a moment to look at the rest of the builds. Hopefully Katarina will be back with us soon. And it seems that Skarner has finished off his Feral Flare before the Jax has. So he's been doing quite a nice job of farming, and so his Feral Flare is completed, as well as those Boots of Mobility, which we've talked about a few times now. So it looks like he's wanting to be being a damage source for his team and chasing people down and one-on-oneing them, dueling them a lot, which is something Skarner is actually quite undervalued for. Skarner has such spammable abilities and such high DPS, high consistent damage, that he can actually 1v1 quite a large amount of the champions in this game and do it very effectively. I don't know how he'll stand up against a Jax come late game, Jax being essentially the king of duels and 1v1 situations, but he certainly has a chance. Skarner is not a bad champion to try and build damage on if your team is able to sustain you being a carry, and it looks like he's actually going for a Trinity Force next, as is the Akali, who has built a Phage, and now looks like she wants to finish off her Infinity Edge, going with that BF sword. Still doesn't have a pair of boots, but hey, who needs boots when you can dash around a lot? And up in top lane, it seems, is where most of the team members for both sides are congregating. Blue team wanting this outer turret, and purple team wanting to defend it. Kog'Maw got taken quite low, gets ulted by the Varus, held in place, ulted by the Zed as well, and Mundo comes in from behind with the final cleaver, going to finish that off, as Jax falls to the Skarner on the other side of the fray. That is a shutdown going over to Skarner as he's chasing into the enemy team here, followed up by Katarina, who does Death Lotus. It lands onto 3 enemy team members. Nice ulti from Sona, going to save the life of Varus long enough for him to get a double kill onto the Morgana and Katarina, and that is a 4-for-2 trade. The Akali is in danger too, perhaps. She's down below half health, getting hit by that piercing arrow and the briefcase from Mundo, as blue team's going to be pushing up onto this inner turret in top lane. Varus is with them, so this is going to go down very quickly. The 80 carry being quite good at taking out turrets generally. As that's another turret going over to blue team. That is a 5-1 turret lead for blue team, who are also at a 6,000 gold lead as well. Purple team beginning to fall behind in this game, actually. Well, they began to fall behind a little while ago, but beginning to actually get to the point where they're going to need to do something, or else the lead that blue team has is going to become insurmountable. They do at least have a decent late game, with Akali and Kog'Maw constituting a pair of fairly good hyper carries later on in the game, and I mean, Katarina certainly can hold her own in the late game as well, as Skarner has found Varus caught out, and as I said earlier, Varus is an immobile champion, and so is going to go down to the Skarner, giving another shutdown over to him. He's certainly going to be happy with all that gold. He might be able to finish off his Trinity Force with that gold that he picked up there, as now Sona's being chased out by the Katarina, but Katarina's a little bit hesitant to keep chasing since they don't have very much vision on the enemy side of the map, and so she doesn't know if the enemy team's going to be coming around to the aid of this Sona and is going to catch her out. But actually, blue team is not even there at all. Well, Jax was, but multiple members of blue team are down on the other side of the map, going for another dragon this game, looking to lengthen their gold lead even more with a bit more global gold, which is certainly where blue team has been shining this game with a 4-turret lead. And I believe they've taken every single dragon so far, not having given up a single one to the enemy team yet. The briefcase from Mundo falling a little bit short there, but it doesn't matter that much. He has a lot more where that came from, as purple team's going to be pushing up the mid lane a little bit, trying to go for this outer turret. They really need to get some more turrets on the board if they want to come back into this game and have a fighting chance here. They just need to stall out and pick up global gold whenever they can, as well as farm. The ulti from Varus coming out onto Akali. She does go into her shroud, though, to avoid taking more than just a quarter of her health. And that is Varus' ulti essentially wasted, though Mundo is behind the enemy lines. Morgana flashing in a bit of a panic, uses her ult as well to try and stall out this Mundo. The ult does proc and then he gets bound thereafter, but he's Mundo, he's regenerating a lot of health. The purple team is rather split here as Jax finds Akali all alone. With the help of Mundo, he brings her down. Skarner trying to duel out with this Jax, but it's not a one-on-one right now. As the Jax does pick up a double kill, Katarina comes in afterwards to clean up on the Jax kill there. But Mundo and Sona are around to bully her away, and now Zed's coming around from the other side. He's going to go in with Deathmark as she shun-pose away, so he follows her through. And then the proc of Deathmark pops her, and she goes down. Down for the count there, and that is a kill going over to the Zed. And Zed now is at 7-4 and has finished off his Black Cleaver as Blue Team's pushing up onto the first inhibitor turret of this game in the middle lane. Perhaps going to be able to get an inhibitor as well. Only Kog'Maw... well, actually, Akali just revived. I was about to say only Kog'Maw and Morgana alive, but the death cooldowns are not very long right now since we're only 25 minutes into the match, and so the purple team has respawned for the most part, and blue team's caught a little bit off guard. Low on health, none of them have more than half of their health. The Varus and the Zed are focused out first, Akali and Kog'Maw getting those two kills, and then the Mundo goes down afterwards once all of his teammates have fallen around him. Skarner picking up that one and evening out the gold a little bit, though blue team does still have a 6,000 gold lead. But at least purple team managed to defend their inhibitor, and so that isn't down. And so it was a turret, and the inhibitor turret is taken, and their inhibitor is naked and exposed to the violent world of Summoner's Rift. But at least it hasn't fallen quite yet. And now it looks like purple team is pinging onto this Baron pit. Jax is down the other side of the map doing his red buffs. This might be a Baron for purple team. They do have a lot of DPS, especially considering that the Akali has gone for an AD build, so her auto attacks are going to be doing quite a bit of damage. I've never actually seen Akali's crit animation before, but it looks like she swings with both of her weapons to the side. I think those are called kamas. But yeah, I think she swings with both of them there. And swings a bit farther to the sides. It's always interesting to see the various crit animations of champions that you don't often get to see that for. Jax coming in a bit late for the steal here as the rest of his team shows up just as he falls. The Akali going to go down to the Varus there, but that is still a one-kill, one-to-one trade, as well as Baron going over to purple team. So they're certainly not unhappy with that. Akali, casualty of war. You got to break a few eggs to make an omelet. But we might need to break even more eggs as the Zed's coming in on to the Kog'Maw here. He goes down to the second proc of Deathmark, but they do manage to trade back the kill onto Zed. Morgana picking up that one with the Dark Binding there at the very end. That is 2 for 2, and Baron going over to purple team. Still a trade in favor of purple team, as now it might be a kill going over to blue team here. No, neither team going to pick up anything. The Katarina tried to engage, but Varus just had too much damage for her to keep walking towards him there. And so she gives up on that kill, and thankfully she hadn't committed quite hard enough that she couldn't just walk away, so she manages to get away with her life as well, retaining that Baron buff for herself. As Morgana finds Varus in the jungle, goes Spell Immune to avoid the slow from red buff, and then binds up the Varus. There's a Skarner in that bush though, Varus, as he gets ulted. Katarina comes in, the Varus gets instantly bursted down, as now Akali is chasing after the Sona, going to take her out with an auto attack, has a Sheen now, so those auto attacks are doing quite a bit of damage, especially if they crit with that Infinity Edge that she's built. My throat's starting to get hoarse with all this back and forth here. And blue team is still ahead in gold by about 3,000, but purple team is wearing Baron buff on a few of their members. Skarner included. Speaking of Skarner, he's going after the Zed here. He dropped the slow onto him, but did not continue chasing after that, after Zed swapped away to his shadow. And Jax is going to be picking up his red buff. He has finished off the Feral Flare at this point, probably finished it off a while ago, but there was so much action that I wasn't able to check the inventories as often as I'd like, as Skarner has caught Mundo out all by himself. Does Skarner get this kill? Mundo is fast and tanky, but he gets stunned up by the Skarner passive. Katarina is here now, gets bound by the Morgana, and Katarina is going to finish off that kill. 3 members of her team getting assists there, and there's a lot of men down there to deal with that Mundo, but blue team wasn't really in a position to take anything off of all that attention that Mundo grabbed with his split push, and so it's just going to be a free kill going over to purple team, and blue team's not going to get anything here. It looks like Zed's trying to make a run for this inhibitor, but Morgana is around to stop him there, as Jax is found by the Akali in this bush. Who will win in this 1v1? We will not get to watch it, as Zed is auto-attacking this inhibitor here. Katarina rushing in with Home Guard is going to be going after him. The Death Lotus part of it is dodged out by the Zed, who goes into his ulti. Katarina goes down then to the Zed's death mark. Skarner has shown up from behind, though. Skarner going to finalize 2 kills, 1 onto Zed, 1 onto Varus. Now he's chasing after the Sona as well. He has those boots 3, as well as having finished off a Trinity Force, which gives movement speed as well. So I don't really think Sona's going to be able to escape here. It's just a matter of time before the Scorpion catches up to her. The Sona actually, with the spammable speed buff, is quite quick and does actually get away. I am proven wrong there, as now Jax is in a 1v1 with Skarner. Don't think Skarner can win this one. He can maybe escape, though, as Morgana has shown up to help him out. He barely survives, nearly goes down to the Jax, manages to take him out. Sona shows up. One more power chord is going to take out the Jax. That is Sona getting a kill, Sona getting a kill, Skarner getting a kill, and Jax getting killed in that long and extended and hectic engagement. About half an hour into this game now, the blue team still has a gold lead, but it's not quite as prominent as it used to be. They're only ahead by just under 1,000 gold now, and so they've allowed Purple Team to catch back up a good amount, and Purple Team does scale pretty well into the late game. Kali getting caught out here by the Dr. Mundo. She is stalling for time, though. Nice flash out of the shroud there to try and juke the enemy team. She goes into the bush, finds the Varus on the other side, looking to bring him down as quickly as she can, but she doesn't quite have enough damage. However, she provided an ample distraction. Purple Team, using her death up there towards the top side of the map, is going to be pushing out a second turret in the mid lane. And that is a 5-6 turret game now, with 5 being purple and blue having 6. So going from a 5 turret lead about 15 minutes ago now to a 1 turret lead, blue team really needs to start stepping on the gas here and using what advantage they have, or else they're going to end up being outscaled by the enemy team, since the only person on their team who really scales as well as, say, a Kog'Maw into the late game is Jax, and Kog'Maw honestly can shred an enemy team a lot easier than a Jax can, simply because of his range advantage and the fact that he can stay much more safe while doing the same sort of damage that a Jax can do. Blue team looking like they want to step on the gas here, coming up the middle lane, going for this exposed inhibitor with all 5 of their members. Skarner running in and ulting onto the Zed. Zed immediately flashing away after the ult ends. Jax going in and 1v1ing the Kog'Maw, but it looks like blue team might have a bit of trouble here as Katarina comes in, does a lot of AoE damage. Now Akali has joined the fray. She's going to be getting... that actually goes over to Skarner, but that is a triple kill for Skarner so far. Can he get the quadra here onto Mundo? He can indeed. That is a quadra kill for the Skarner. Building all that damage sure seems to have paid off at this point, as he has a frozen mallet, actually, and he looks like he's building a Blade of the Ruined King as well, so he's just going heavy into damage with a little bit of HP to survive being in that melee range, which he's forced to be in, being Skarner. And now blue team, with their 2 surviving members in that 5-4-3 exchange there, they did ace the enemy team, are going to be pushing up the middle lane and looking to get an inhibitor turret, perhaps even an inhibitor of their own. But still, we're 32 minutes into the game, so the death timers are starting to lengthen, but they're nowhere near as insane as they can get to be later on in the game, so it doesn't look like they're going to be getting anything out of this, aside, of course, from an ace, which put them ahead in terms of gold by about 1,000, so that's certainly something. This is the first time, I believe, aside from when First Blood was given over to them, that they actually have a gold lead in this game, so it's taken them 32 minutes, but they're starting to get back into this. And it's only going to get worse from here, because Kog'Maw does not fall off. Kog'Maw does not at all fall off, and Akali, despite her unorthodox build, probably doesn't either. I mean, I don't know what her scalings are, but she seems to be doing a good amount of damage, and auto attacks hurt no matter who you are, so long as you build AD, so she's certainly going to be doing something later on in the game, and Skarner's building damage as well. There's just so many threats on Purple Team. Speaking of Purple Team, the Akali is trying to duel the Zed up in the top lane, but doesn't quite have enough damage to take him out, and the death mark pops and she goes down. So in that 1v1 duel, we can see who's the winner, who's the better ninja, and it is Zed who is the better ninja, and Akali who is the dead ninja. Down in bottom lane, the Kog'Maw getting caught out there by the Varus. Thankfully, the spell shield from Morgana going to keep him alive long enough to die to a piercing arrow that hits from a long distance, but thankfully, he has his passive, and so the Varus goes down as well, as up in top lane, Katarina getting 1v2'd by the enemy Jax, and the Zed manages to take out Zed before going down. Jax then finishes off the kill on her. The Mundo trying to teleport away, but gets ulted by the Skarner and then goes down for a double kill. Skarner picking up 2 there. Skarner really doing quite a lot of work in this game. He's at 14-3 already, and he doesn't seem to be slowing up. He's already hit max level at level 18. As Jax is pushing out the top lane, and we get a bit of a quiet spot, thankfully, because my voice was starting to go hoarse there. Baron has just respawned, and there's some pings coming out onto it. Skarner is nearby. He's going to be doing his red buff. Jax is also nearby doing his blue. And it looks like one of the teams might want to go for this Baron pickup here. It's probably going to be the next hot spot of contention between these two teams in this match. While I have the time, I'd like to take a moment to look at the builds. The Morgana is going for a very hefty damage build, actually, out of that support role. She has chosen to go for a Death Cap, a Zhonya's, and Sorcerer's Shoot. She has built a support item in the, well, actually 2, in the form of the Sightstone and the Talisman of Ascension. Ascension. So she's going to be able to give her team a large speed buff, as well as control vision on the map a bit better. But speaking of controlling vision, Purple Team has opted not to go for a single red trinket, so they're going to have a difficult time clearing out wards from this Baron pit if they decide to go for it. But it looks like Blue Team is the ones who want to go for this Baron. The Purple Team seems to know that it's happening, though. They do have a ward in the back of the pit, so they can see that it's being done. As Akali's going to be diving in onto the Varus as Jax gets bound up by Morgana. She then goes into Zhonya's to avoid some damage as the Akali goes down to Zed, but there is a Skarner in the back of the Baron pit wreaking havoc on the enemy team. He takes out the Jax. He's going in onto the rest of the members, but he goes down to the combined damage from Baron and the enemy team, but not before getting the Smite Steal onto Baron. That is the second Baron of the game going over to Purple Team. Kog'Maw now getting chased down by the Mundo and Zed. A final Shuriken throw from Zed is going to finish him off. His true damage not really going to mean much in the long run. However, Katarina, possibly the reason why Purple Team got eliminated in that team fight. Katarina has been split pushing bot this whole time and got herself an inhibitor turret at least. So that is Baron going over to Purple Team as well as another turret, evening up the turret score at 6-6 and putting them ahead in gold by about 5,000, because that is now the second Baron of the game which they've been able to take, once legitimately with all of their team there and once as a steal. Now Mundo going to be taking up these turrets, but Katarina has shown up and she's doing quite a lot of damage. She has Baron buff running. A final knife toss is going to be taking out that Mundo, as Zed, now low on health, trying to escape the enemy, does get a speed buff from his friendly Syndra. That's a Sona. And they do manage to escape the wrath of the respawning Purple Team. And Mundo goes down, but they do not manage to take out any Nexus turrets. And so that is a 5,000 gold lead for Purple Team. And Blue Team is falling more and more behind in this game. They've really got to do something. They've got to do something before they get so far behind that they simply can't win these team fights without getting a really good pick-off at some point. And while pick-offs are always nice, you don't really want to rely on them if you don't have to. Now Zed getting found by the Morgana, gets bound up, but Morgana does not want to chase that out. The Morgana being quite squishy, having gone with a heavy AP build, doesn't want to try and duel the Zed despite the health difference in her favor. She actually pops Talisman of Ascension, trying to escape the enemy team. The Zed going in with his ulti onto Katarina after flashing in, goes down to the damage from Kog'Maw, but does manage to at least take Katarina with him. Now Akali has shown up, goes down to the Varus, but takes Varus low enough herself that Kog'Maw can finish off that kill with a shot of his ulti. And that is 2 kills going over to each team there in the middle lane in even exchange if I've ever seen one. Jax going to be farming out his jungle, trying to get more of those Feral Flare stacks. Gets found, though, by the Skarner. Skarner immediately ulting and pulling him back under that suppression. Now chasing after him with the Frozen Mallet, going to be slowing him down. Slows him down with the shot from his tail there. Jax going to be stunning him up, but Kog'Maw has shown up as well, and Skarner going to finish off that kill. That's Jax going down, and the exchange is no longer even. Purple Team increasing their gold lead, going up to a 6,000 gold lead against the enemy team, though as the game lengthens, gold leads mean less and less, and it's more to do with who gets picked off and who has better positioning in team fights, as well as the better late game team comp, of course, which I think I'm going to have to give over to Purple Team, despite their unorthodox builds and even unorthodox picks. I'd have to say that a Katarina is going to be wrecking a lot more havoc in a late game team fight than a Zed is. Not that Zed can't do anything, but the AoE damage is going to be a bit more effective. Katarina just being a general better team fighter than Zed. And Kog'Maw is going to be doing a good amount more damage in the late game than a Varus. Though Varus, to his credit, has managed to farm up a lot better than this Kog'Maw has. as well as he has more kills under his belt. So he's going to be able to do more damage currently. It's just once we get to 6 items, it's not going to matter. It's going to be Kog'Maw doing more damage simply by right-clicking because of the percentage chunk on his W and the free attack speed that he gets off of his passive on, I believe, his Q. Multiple members of blue team pushing up the mid lane. They do have super minions with them. Kog'Maw and Varus dueling it out in a 1v1. They're both right-clicking each other, and then Zed and Akali come in to finish off the kills, respectively. And the Akali nearly goes down to the death mark. Does actually get finished off by the Ignite there, as Sona comes in to try and stun up some members of the enemy team to save the rest of her team members. And that is 2 kills going down on each team. Once again, the AD carries and an assassin from each team going down. Another even exchange if I've ever seen one. Speaking of builds, as I was earlier, Skarner has reached full build, and let's take a look at it. He's gone with a very hefty damage build. He has a Pharaoh Flare, a Blade of the Ruined King, a Trinity Force, and a Frozen Mallet. That is a lot of attack speed. A lot of attack speed. Also, speaking of builds, Katarina has chosen to go for another Hextech Revolver, which I have to say I don't quite agree with, because if you take a look at the descriptions of the items, the Hextech Revolver gives you 20% spell vamp, as does the Hextech Gunblade. They both do that. However, they don't both do that if you have both of them. It's a unique passive, spell vamp. In general, actually, I think every time you can get it, it's a unique passive. So you can really only get 20% spell vamp plus whatever you get from runes or champion passives. As Morgana and Katarina are going to be going in onto the Jax here. Thought that Katarina was all alone, but Morgana was around to save her bacon. However, Zed has shown up, going to be going in with Deathmark to avoid that Dark Binding. The pop from Deathmark at the end there, enough damage to take out the Katarina, and Morgana, not able to 1v1 the Zed, is simply going to walk away. And that is another even trade. A Jax going down for a Katarina, and the death timers have become obscenely long at this point. The Katarina dead for a full minute here. Wonderful flash from Morgana, going to be dodging out that Varus ulti, the Tendrils of Corruption, and she managed to flash away just at the edge there, just avoiding the end of that cast. Blue team, though, still going to be taking this opportunity to push up the mid lane, and Kali coming in, doing quite a bit of burst damage to that Varus, takes him down before going down herself to the Varus. That last auto attack before he goes down, taking her out, as Skarner finds a lone Sona off to the side, and that is easy pickings for him, and now he's going after the Zed. That's a double kill. And now it looks like Purple Team has the man advantage on the map here. They have 2 men down to the enemy team's 4. They're going to be pushing up the middle lane, taking out those minions very quickly with the wave clear that they have on Kog'Maw, Skarner, and Morgana. Baron is up in about a minute or so, so Purple Team could try to go for that. Skarner instead running down the side of the map, going for a Dragon to give his team some more global gold on the map, get everybody up to full build if he can. Speaking of builds, the Akali is still going with a full AD build, basically building AD carry Akali, has gotten a Phantom Dancer and a Static Shiv, going for quite a lot of attack speed on top of her Infinity Edge and Trinity Force. Still doesn't need boots. Who needs boots when you can dash a lot? I mean, she can jump pretty far. Doesn't matter if she has boots, she can jump as much as she wants to. Well, not as much as she wants to, but if she's in a team fight and gets a lot of resets, she can jump quite a bit. Morgana places a ward there over into the Wraith camp just as it goes down, and Skarner's going to be finishing off his blue buff. He probably has quite a few Feral Flare stacks at this point. He's just going to be getting stronger and stronger as the game goes on with that item, but to be fair, Jax has one of his own as well. And Jax does scale a bit better than Skarner into the late game. Especially with the Feral Flare that he has in his inventory, allowing him to scale for every kill and assist and jungle creep that he picks up. Skarner off to the side, getting caught out by the enemy team, does manage to sidestep the Varus ulti. However, there are 3 members chasing after him. He's very tanky, though. He does have quite a bit of health, as now the Katarina comes in and finishes off the Varus with quite a burst of damage. No one is touching Kog'Maw, though, and he's doing a lot of damage to the enemy team. No one is on him, and this looks like it might be really bad for Blue Team, as Skarner still hasn't even gone down. He was the original focus of their team, and they didn't even manage to take him out. And that is another ace for Purple Team. 48-40 in terms of kills, and they're going to be pushing up mid lane now with that, as Skarner actually roams down towards bot, perhaps, going for that open inhibitor. Sorry about the camera there, don't quite know why my mouse twitched, and that is a surrender coming out from Blue Team. Good game, Purple Team. Good going. See you tomorrow, guys. Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you want your replay featured on the channel, check the description. You can figure out how to do that down there. Yeah, I mean, 25 episodes. episodes. Here's to 75 more. See you guys tomorrow.